3 doesn't have a purport, so then text 4 has a small purport. I'll just read. What's on the board? Oh yeah. Okay. Prajapatir Dagda Shrishno Bhavatyaja Mukham Shira Mitrasya Chakshusheta Bhagam Swam Varisho Bhagaha Prajapatir Dagda Shrishno Bhavatyaja Mukham Shira Mitrasya Chakshusheta Bhagam Swam Varisho Bhagaha. Would you like to chant? Anybody else? Okay, word for word. Prajapati Daksha Dagda Shrishnaha, whose head has been burned to ashes. Bhavatu, let there be. Ajamukam, with the face of a goat. Shiraha, a head. Mitrasya, of Mitra. Chakshusha, through the eyes. Ikshita, may see. Bhagam, share. Swam, his own. Vadhishaha, of the sacrifice. Bhagaha, Bhaga. Translation. Lord Shiva continued, since the head of Daksha has already been burned to ashes, he will have the head of a goat. The demigod known as Bhaga will be able to see his share of sacrifice through the eyes of Mitra. Text 4. I'll just say it by myself. Pusha tu yajamanasya dadbir jakshu tapishtabhu deva prakita sarvanga yema ucheshanam dadu. The demigod Pusha will be able to chew only through the teeth of his disciples. And if alone, he will have to satisfy himself by eating dough made from chickpea flour. But the demigods who have agreed to give me my share of the sacrifice will recover from all their injuries. Purport. The demigod Pusha became dependent on his disciples for chewing. Otherwise, he was allowed to swallow only dough made of chickpea flour. Thus his punishment continued. He could not use his teeth for eating, since he had laughed at Lord Shiva, deriding him by showing his teeth. In other words, it was not appropriate for him to have teeth, for he had used them against Lord Shiva. Om Jnana Timyandasya Gananjana Shalakoya Chakshu Unmilitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, thank you for allowing me to serve in this way, trying to speak on Srimadbhagavatam. Thank you for allowing us to be here in SanDiego and getting your divine association. Really appreciate it. It's been very beneficial to associate with such nice devotees as yourself, so thank you very much. So the Bhagavatam is considered the ripe fruit of all Vedic knowledge. And in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto, in the first chapter, in the very first verse, it describes how Lord Sri Krishna, he even bewilders the sages and the demigods. He puts the sages and demigods into an illusion. And we can see here that Prajapati Daksha, although a very powerful personality, was seemingly put into illusion for the purpose of creating a pastime that is supposed to give us a message and a lesson in life. And basically a summarized version of the story is that Daksha had a daughter named Sati, and she was the wife of Lord Shiva, and Daksha was going to have, he always had this, not, I want to say envy, but this unappreciation of Lord Shiva because he was seemingly externally dirty. He was worshipped by ghosts and goblins. He would hang out in crematoriums and so forth. And so Daksha would always have in his mind, why is my daughter, who is from such a prestigious family, married to this low-born person who is in the mode of ignorance? So he had an offensive mentality towards Lord Shiva. And if I remember correctly, Daksha was going to have this family meeting, and where he was going to invite different demigods and different family members, but he didn't invite his own daughter Sati because of her association with Lord Shiva. But she heard, once upon hearing about this meeting, she wanted to go because she thought, this is my family, so I have the right to be there. And Lord Shiva, warned her not to go, because he understood that Daksha has at the moment has an offensive mentality, so it'd be better if you didn't go. But she disobeyed the instruction of her husband. She went anyways, and upon going to this meeting, she heard Daksha, her own father, criticize and offend Lord Shiva. And she was such a chaste personality, such a chaste wife of Lord Shiva, that she couldn't bear living. She couldn't bear living in a body that came from a person who offended Lord Shiva. So she decided with her, because of her chastity, chastity actually creates power, creates Shakti. So with her Shakti, with her power, she actually spontaneously combusted on the spot. She went into trance and meditated, and she burned herself so her body was no longer existing. She didn't want to be existing as a body part of Daksha. So upon hearing this, Lord Shiva became furious, and he came on the spot with his different ghost and goblin warriors and just basically annihilated the arena of Daksha and killed a bunch of Daksha's associates and even cut off the head of Daksha himself. I don't think... Yeah, it wasn't Lord Shiva, but it was, but Lord Shiva's associate. And so this brings us to where we are today. So after all this happened, Lord Shiva was somehow feeling regret that he had done this, and so he is giving back different facilities that these personalities lost. Like Daksha lost his head, so because he lost his head, it burnt to ashes. He can't have his head any longer, so they put a goat head on him. So he has to exist the rest of his life with a goat head. So the whole point of this is actually to show that, okay, Krishna puts these divine personalities in the Bhagavatam into illusion to display a pastime, just like we were hearing the other day, that Shringi cursed Maharaj Parikshit. Maharaj Parikshit was seemingly an illusion, and he was feeling thirst and hunger and doing things that he wouldn't normally do, like put a dead snake on the yogis like a garland. and then he got cursed. And all this is to actually give us an instruction. And so we can understand that Daksha, with an offensive mentality, offending a great personality, has caused a lot of havoc to his life. And so we can see that everything is orchestrated in the Bhagavatam by Krishna. And if we have, Prabhupada encouraged us to have jnana chakshush, or shastra chakshush. It means seeing the eyes through the lens of the shastra, or the knowledge that we've learned from the spiritual master, from the devotees, or from the divine scriptures, and to actually apply those teachings in our life. So on a day-to-day basis, wherever we go, whatever we're doing, whatever position we're in, we could always remember these pastimes, remember this knowledge, and have realizations through practical experience. And so one thing that I'm getting out of this story is that one should not be, first of all, puffed up with pride, because Daksha, he's thinking himself too prestigious to have a wife born or married to a low-born personality, but also to glorify the devotees. If he, people say consciousness molds reality, and this is kind of like a New Age phrase that, you create your own reality through your consciousness. But in one sense, it is true. You can see that like a bunch of these New Age, like Mayavadi philosophical thinkers, a lot of what they're saying is half true, but they don't have the concept of achintya beta beta tattva. They think that we're all one and that you're God and that consciousness molds reality, but they don't have the other side of the spectrum. So consciousness molds reality in such a way that whatever our mentality and our consciousness is, our path in life or our destiny will be paved through that consciousness. Just like if one wanted to, enjoy sense gratification, just with that consciousness of wanting to enjoy sense gratification, so many things comes. Opportunities for schooling, opportunities for work, opportunities for, marriage and big house and all these things centered around your own false ego. But if we could see that Prabhupada, just with the consciousness of wanting to serve Krishna, wanting to serve a spiritual master, a whole worldwide movement was created and is going on for the next 10,000 years just by consciousness. So Brigapati says that we are our service attitude. That's who we are. Depending on your service attitude, that's going to create your conditioning and where you're going in life. Everybody has a propensity to serve, and according to how they reciprocate with Krishna and Krishna's external energy is going to depend where they end up and who they're going to be. Now everyone is serving Krishna, whether they know it or not, either indirectly or directly. And everyone out there is a part and parcel, pure devotee, enlightened spiritual entity coming from the supreme spiritual abode. But because of their consciousness, it has molded a reality where they have to come to this world and reciprocate with Krishna's external energy. Now everyone is actually in yoga, because yoga means to connect. So in one sense, everybody out there that you see, the cockroach and the fly and the person driving down the street, they're also in yoga because they're constantly connected with Krishna. They're just Krishna's external energy. And the process of bhakti yoga means to just redevelop our understanding and our remembrance that we are always connected with Krishna. So Daksha here, temporarily in illusion, temporarily bewildered by false prestige and false pride, has created a Vaishnava aparad. And there's many different types of aparad. There's Dham aparad, Seva aparad, Jiva aparad, etc. But it explains that the worst type of aparad is Vaishnava aparad, because all these other offenses can be, and Jiva aparad is also not very good, because Krishna doesn't like to see his parts and parcels criticized and offended. in one sense, if you're offending a part and parcel of Krishna, you're offending Krishna. This is part and parcel. So we should try to also treat Krishna's property in the proper way. But like I was saying earlier, the offenses that are committed to Krishna directly, you might make a mistake on the altar, or a technical mistake on accident or whatever. No, Krishna's a personality. It's not just like a machine that if you make a mistake, your arm gets lopped off and that's it. And Krishna understands that, here's my devotee, he's trying, and he made a mistake, or he doesn't have full control of his mind and senses. But if one offends a devotee, that actually creates havoc in life. There's a saying in the Bible that pride comes before the fall. So we can see here from Daksha's pride, he has fallen into a very interesting situation. Now he has the head of a goat. So, one day I was thinking, I explained this to Devarata one time, that if you're on the ground paying dandavats to Krishna, you can't fall because you're already down on the ground. But if you're standing up, or if you're on a ladder or whatever, there's a big chance you can fall down and get hurt. So in the same way, if we humble ourselves, and we always keep ourselves down on the ground in humble obeisances, there's no way we can fall. And this doesn't just mean with the body, this means with the mind and the consciousness and your whole life. There's a whole dandavat obeisances to Krishna. And also, speaking of the Bible, this verse reminded me of a phrase or a verse in the Bible in the purport is saying that because Pusha lost his teeth, and because he was laughing at Lord Shiva, deriding him by showing his teeth, it was not appropriate for him to have teeth, because he was offending a pure devotee. So in the Bible it actually says that if your right eye is causing you to sin, you should gouge it out, and you should throw it away, so you don't have any eyes. And we can see from the example of Bilva Mangala Thakur, this is exactly what he did. He was wanting to renounce, material sense gratification and just dedicate his life to Krishna, but because of past conditioning, he had this attraction to the opposite sex. And although he was trying to meditate on Krishna, his eyes were always attracted to that form, so much so that he wanted to engage in illicit activity. But because of his devotion, although he had a little slip up, he understood that this is going to deviate me from the path of pure devotional service. He decided to take a needle and gouge out his eyes. So it's not recommended that we do that, because we are preachers. We're trying to spread the Krishna conscious movement. Bilva Mangala Thakur was a bhajana siddhi, or bhajana siddha. So he was just engaged in his bhajan. So someone like that could, that's a crazy activity. Can you just imagine poking out your eyes? It's crazy. It also says that if your arm is going to engage in sin, you should also cut off your arm, because it's better to have, or it says something like, it's better to get rid of part of your body than your whole body to go to hell. So that's what it says in the Bible. So we can see here that this personality Pusha, because he offended Lord Shiva, he lost his teeth. And it even says in the Vedic scriptures that if you hear someone blaspheming the Lord or his devotees, you're allowed to cut out his tongue. But it also says you have two options. You can cut out his tongue, or you can just plug your ears and walk away. So I think it's most practical for us in this age to just plug our ears and walk away. So we can see here Daksha, although one may say, from this day on, I'm not going to be proud, I'm not going to commit offenses, I'm not going to be lusty, and I'm going to be with full determination, stay away from these 6 enemies of greed and anger and lust. But Bhagavad Gita explains in the 3rd chapter that according to the modes that you have been conditioned by, you are forced to act, actually. So one conditioned by the mode of passion is actually forced to act lusty, is forced to act with anger, and etc. So one has to seriously purify himself from these lower modes and come to the mode of goodness. Otherwise we'll be controlled. We're basically controlled by material nature unless we rise to a higher platform. And rising to the mode of goodness comes, first of all, from hearing and chanting very attentively, but also, it's a purification process. We can't just artificially do it because it won't last. We actually have to purify our consciousness through attentive hearing and chanting, but you can also do practical things in your life, the way you eat, the way you even sleep, the way you speak, the way you lead a kirtan. You can do those things and try to do it in the mode of goodness, and this way cultivate sattva gun in your life, and at the same time simultaneously attentively hearing and chanting, and one automatically purifies himself till he comes to the stage of sattva gun, and by offering sattva gun to Lord Krishna becomes Shuddha sattva. So one forced to act in the modes that he has cultivated, one should also be non-duplicit and be real with where we're at, not acting on a higher platform than what we really are. Like it explains in the 11th canto that the Paramahamsas don't have to follow very strictly all the detailed Vedic rules and regulations, because they've already achieved the goal of all rules and regulations, which is pure devotional service, constantly meditating on Krishna. So if one who has achieved the goal doesn't have to do all the preliminary steps of strict followance of all the procedures and rituals, but we shouldn't act like we're on that platform automatically because we're engaged in devotional service. I remember hearing a class by His Holiness Ranath Maharaj, and he was explaining this very same thing, saying that devotees had this concept that because I'm engaging in devotional service, I'm transcendental to the modes of passion and ignorance. I don't really have to pay attention to all the minute details of trying to be in sattva gun. But he says that this doesn't last. One should be honest with where he's at. If Daksha was honest with where he was, I'm okay, I have false pride and I have an offensive mentality. Although that we ourselves may have those qualities, we should recognize those qualities within us and seek higher, superior, guidance. Like Balaram Prabhu was saying yesterday, we should seek people, advanced devotees that can help us on our path become free from these things. Because if we just, suppress these qualities that are dormant within our heart and act like we're some advanced devotee, then we don't actually attain the goal, which is a completely pure heart. But if one's honest, okay, I'm attracted to material energy, I have false pride, my mind criticizes devotees, then one can be honest, pray to Krishna that I have these faults, and please help me rectify my consciousness, and so I can serve you better, and I can serve the Vaishnavas better. Actually, also in the 11th canto, Krishna it's called the Uddhava Gita. Krishna's speaking to Uddhava, and he's explaining that he tells Uddhava in one verse, he says, Uddhava, because you're my pure devotee, you're actually more dear to me than my life itself. So if Krishna is seeing his pure devotee as more dear than his own life, then what to speak of us, how we should see other devotees. And in another perspective, you could see that everyone's a devotee. Everyone's a pure devotee. Deep down inside, they're just covered by the gunas, the three gunas. And according to where they're at in their advancement in life, we can serve them in a particular way to, encourage them or help them. Someone who's completely materialistic might be a different way than if we serve, like Dravida Prabhu or something else. So in this way, one should learn how to associate with devotees. It explains this in the Nectar of Instruction, how we should serve the Kanishta, the Madhyama, and the Uttama Adhikari. And from understanding that Krishna loves his devotees more than he loves his own self, then we can create a foundational, like a foundation in our life just by loving other devotees and serving them and helping them advance in their Krishna consciousness also. And in that same verse that I just quoted about when Krishna was speaking to Uddhava, in the purport it's explaining that although one may have many faults, a devotee might have, he's still struggling with his anarthas, we shouldn't see the externals of that personality, and we should understand that this person is sincerely, wherever he's at in his life, sincerely trying to engage in the Lord's service. And in this way we don't have this offensive mentality of, I'm better than you and he's lower than I am, or he's better than me, why does he get more attention than I do, or why is someone honoring that person and not honoring me? I'm obviously the one that deserves it. So once we see that everything is orchestrated by Krishna, just like this whole pastime in the Bhagavatam, everything's orchestrated by Krishna. So even within this pastime of this Hare Krishna movement, we can see that everything's orchestrated by Krishna. Everything going on in the temple is that Krishna is controlling everything. He's controlling everything outside by his external energy, but once someone tries to surrender to Krishna, then he personally guides that person to help him advance, to go closer and closer to his lotus feet. And we can even see, like Balaram was saying yesterday, also some people will fall away and might deviate from the path for a couple years but come back. But we should also understand that that's Krishna's mercy, that whatever is happening in that devotee's life is actually meant for his betterment. Even if he falls down and he's seemingly performing the most sinful activities, we should understand, okay, that's what that person needs to go through, so he can, eventually in the future take spiritual life more serious and go back home, back to Godhead. And actually there's a verse like that in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9 and text 30. Krishna says, Apichit sudarashado bhajate mam ananyabhak sado eva samantavya samyag vyavasaho hitaha vyav samyag vyavasaho hisaha. Krishna says that, even if one commits the most abominable action, he is considered saintly if he is properly situated in his determination. So when I was, my first few years in the movement, that was my favorite verse, because I was struggling with my, I'm still struggling with my mind, but more so then than now, struggling with my mind and my senses and different mistakes and mental, daily mental fall downs or whatever, and but I would always take shelter of that verse, if I just keep going and try to engage in devotional service, Krishna saying that I'm on the right path. So we should try to apply that, also how we see other Vaishnavas, and we should also apply that how we see Daksha also. Daksha is just going through what he needs to go through, even if it seems very severe, so that he can also come to the perfectional stage. There's a difference between the demigods and pure devotees. The demigods aren't pure devotees; most of them aren't. They're mixed devotion. So although they have devotion to Krishna, they believe Krishna is God, and they're serving him to carry out universal affairs, somehow they still have this consciousness of trying to enjoy the material energy. But it's amazing how we're given a process, lowly people of the earth in this Kali Yuga, to actually, in Krishna's eyes, become more exalted than the demigods. Krishna's seeing one's, he sees devotion, pure devotion, more attractive than, like it says like the personified Vedas singing their hymns or whatever. So the demigods still have material desire, just like saying Pusha, if he became dependent on his disciples for chewing. Otherwise, he was allowed to swallow only dough made of chickpea flour. So if we went to breakfast this morning and there were no burritos, but there were only chickpea flour with water, I think David Raja Prabhu would not be very happy. No, I'm just kidding. I think all of us would be like, what the heck? But we could see, like examples like Raghunath Das Goswami. He was hardly eating anything. Every couple days he had like a palm full of, what was it? Buttermilk, yeah. Palm full of buttermilk, And I think even at one time he was just eating flour. Just like, I don't know if it was chickpea flour. But, he was completely satisfied because he wasn't trying to, his happiness wasn't dependent on, the satisfaction of his senses. He was completely absorbed in Krishna's pastimes. So in the same way, the more and more we become absorbed in hearing and chanting Krishna's glories and pastimes and engaging in devotional service, we actually can transcend this bodily concept of life. And subtle or gross is the tendency for the neophyte that, if the gross material desires turn off, then the subtle desires turn on. We temporarily, for a day, we feel like, oh, we could take sannyas tomorrow, I'm free from lust. And then, but, your mind, you become proud, and you think you're better than others. And then the next day, you become humble, but then you become lusty. It's like, it's always like a struggle in the neophyte stage. But Lochan Das Thakur, he says that, Krishna consciousness is Kevala Ananda Kanda. So it's the path of pure bliss, even on the neophyte stage, that one can engage even in Vaidhi Bhakti and experience a significant higher taste than what he was experiencing in the material world. And it's really exciting if we learn these teachings of the previous acharyas, what to look forward to in our advancement in Krishna consciousness. There's so much to look forward to. If we're hearing the pastimes of Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan, and we're hearing about his associates and his different pastimes with the cowherd boys, and all these things, in a neophyte stage, we're not purely relishing them as if, someone like Prabhupada or someone like Dravida Prabhu or something, but it purifies our consciousness, and we can actually understand where we're heading. Like if one wanted to go to Amsterdam, he bought a plane ticket to Amsterdam, it'd be nice to read about Amsterdam and know what to expect, what the people are like, what the weather's like, where to go to visit. So in the same way, our destination is Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan, in this Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, especially in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's where we're heading. Although, according to one's reciprocation with the Lord, according to his different manifestations, one might have a different, mood of love or service to a particular form. But in our particular Sampradaya, we are encouraged to head towards Goloka Vrindavan. Actually, every day at the Tulsi prayers, that's what we're singing for. Tulsi Maharani, we shouldn't just say the prayers and it's just like a plant. We should meditate. This is a pure devotee in front of us. And we're praying for this pure devotee to allow us entrance into the divine realms of Goloka Vrindavan. So we're reading about where we're going, understanding our destination point. And the Bhagavatam is designed in such a way where one will stay on the path, and if he's analyzing what he's reading and what lesson he's supposed to learn from every pastime and the purports, then it will very much create a foundation in one's life that he will head towards the path of Vrindavan that Srila Prabhupada is giving us, but do so in such a way where he's safe from any obstacles and fall down, and that he is giving Krishna more and more pleasure until he finally reaches the 10th canto. It's supposed to, if you're actually analyzing everything, you're supposed to have become significantly purified for when the time you reach the 10th canto, you can actually relish what's going on in Krishna's pastimes. And that's actually the whole goal. Like we were discussing yesterday out on the table here, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. And then we were saying how, some of his pastimes just seems like there's no lesson to be learned. There's no, like, philosophy. There's, like, Krishna having a good time. And then, actually that's the goal of all philosophy. The philosophy is supposed to convince us that, the holy names contains everything, and then Krishna's pastimes that's the true reality. And the philosophy is supposed to purify our minds and solidify our conviction that this is actually the goal. And then someone who has achieved that understanding, firm conviction of that understanding, then just relishing Krishna's names and pastimes is just what he wants to do 24 hours a day. Even if he just has to eat chickpea flowers, even if he has the head of a goat or whatever, in any situation we could be in hell or heaven. Lord Shiva actually explains this, that a devotee doesn't care if he's in hell, heaven, or in spiritual world on earth, because anywhere he is a spiritual world, because he's relishing Krishna's holy names. So basically what I was trying to get out of this class is to understand that the Bhagavatam is giving us messages. We should actually analyze what it's trying to tell us, and that we should respect devotees, not make offenses like Daksha has done to Lord Shiva, and just cooperate with each other, as we Srila Prabhupada wants most. After all, you say like the conclusion of the story actually like gives like the overall message of the whole story. So when Prabhupada was leaving this world, his conclusive message was to cooperate with each other. So although he did emphasize different things like book distribution and science preaching and so many other things, the conclusive message is to cooperate, and all these other things will go on automatically. And that's all I have to say for now. If there's any questions, I'd be more than willing to try to answer them. Or if there's any constructive criticism, you can tell me how I can give a better class. Yes, Bhakti.
Sometimes the devotee in modern times, at least particularly in modern times, a devotee with position or power or so fall down and there's a bunch of that to exploit the position so much. And a lot of devotees think, oh, forgive that person, it's terrible. I'm the reason for that. I'm the
I actually had a slight realization at this one point. Yeah. I won't mention any names, but there's this particular devotee who's been struggling for many years, but he's like trying, and he'll do good for some time, and then he'll fall away. But recently, he was doing good, and I realized how much shelter the devotees and how much mercy the devotees were giving him, and they were like treating him like a king, basically. They were just like glorifying him, giving him anything he needed for his spiritual life. And he eventually had some trouble again. But one doesn't, so oftentimes we forget how much shelter we get when we come to devotional service. We're getting like so much shelter from Krishna and the Vaishnavas. Thank you for that comment. So, anything else? Yeah, I don't know the whole situation, depending on like the severity of their offense, Yeah, I would have to look into it more. But, yeah, I've heard, I think it was Bhadri Narayan Maharaj actually said, it's very difficult to have a spiritual movement in the material world. And we get people of all sorts coming to the movement. And we've also, our International Society for Krishna Consciousness also had something similar happen, like in the 80s. There's like this child abuse thing. And, yeah, it's very difficult because it's like a touchy subject. But yeah, we should try to understand, these people, even if they're committing a very abominable act of child abuse, depending on the severity. They're also, spiritual living entities. But we actually we have to like interact with different people according to their conditions in a particular way. Like in the Manu Samhita, it describes that, if someone commits murder, then it's best for that person to also be murdered to rectify his like sinful karma. Otherwise, he's going to have to suffer in this life and the next. But if you execute that person who committed murder, it actually will benefit that person. And we can understand no one actually dies because we're souls, so he committed a murder, which is an abominable action. But, that person that gets executed because of committing murder, he doesn't actually die, but his soul will somehow progress because of that punishment. So, I don't know so much about what's going on in the Catholic Church, but punishment is sometimes necessary. And just like Dr. Zach was explaining, we should understand that, Krishna is arranging everything. Krishna will take care of that person, whatever he needs. But also Krishna gives people different positions, like different managers and managers of like temples or whatever, authority figures that can also act on Krishna's behalf to punish a particular person or chastise someone or whatever. But if we're not in that position, then we shouldn't even have, this is my perspective, if we're not in that position, then we don't really have to even worry about it. We can understand that Krishna is orchestrating everything. So it's not my position to chastise or punish that person. I'm going to go on in my own devotional service and understand that Krishna is taking care of everything. And I'm going to try to, be a better person myself. As that's my perspective. But if someone has something more better to say, they can say that also. Is that okay? I don't know what else to say about that. Okay. Balaram has something to say. Yeah, Krishna explains it to Uddhava in the 11th canto, how to make a conscious effort. He even says like very detailed things, like the water you drink even could be a tamagun, rajagun, a sattvagun, things like that. So yeah, you make a conscious effort, but at the same time, attentively hear and chant, surrender to Krishna. Bhakti, right? Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.